the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. My shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy.
Welcome to Unerased Recorded Live. My name is Tracy Chiles McGhee, and I am the host of She Wrote the Book. Today's topic is Civically Speaking, Democracy is Us. We will showcase Black women who are working on the front lines to make sure that we live in a more equitable and just world. Our featured guest today will be Kat Calvin, who is the author of American Identity in Crisis and the founder of Spread the Vote. We have a really great show lined up for you today, so let's get started.
My name is Kadita Kenner. I'm the founding CEO of the New Pennsylvania Project. We're a voting rights organization statewide here in Pennsylvania. We center communities of color, we center the youth and immigrant communities in our work, and it is our goal to expand the electorate so that everybody is brought into this democracy here in Pennsylvania and everybody is able to get registered to vote and then cast their ballot.
So my name is Krista Jones. I am involved in a lot of activities in the community. I'm really passionate about empowering particularly African-American women in terms of civic engagement, advocacy, and politics. And when I think about the work that we're doing in our communities now, it's really led me to this philosophy of a 365-day-a-year advocacy. There is really no election season. There should be no campaign season. We really have to be thinking about the long game.
My name is Janice Robinson. I am the North Carolina director for Red, Wine, and Blue. And what we do, we are a women-led 501c3c4. Basically, we amplify the voices of the diversity of suburban women. First of all, educating them that they do have political power. And then we train them how to use their political power around the issues that are important to them in their community. And then, of course, encouraging them to then vote up the ballot.
We spend a lot of time throughout the year registering folks to vote, but those most recently registered to vote are the least likely to actually show up to the polls. And so it takes a lot of effort to get newly registered folks in particular to the polls to cast a ballot. And there's many ways that we can get out the vote. The first one, and probably maybe the easiest way, is just to talk to our family and friends. Let them know that we're voting and ask them if they're going to be voting. And if you're living in the same communities and they vote where you go vote, take them along with you. Make it a party. Make it a day of celebration at the polls and take your friends and family with you.
A lot of times people think about the traditional ways of getting out the vote. The work that I do with the Black Women's Roundtable of Virginia, we do all of that, but we're trying not to reinvent the wheel. We're bringing together African-American women often who are maybe new advocates. So we partner with other organizations that are doing those traditional get out the vote activities really well. But what we're working on is empowering them as individuals. So making sure that they are taking care of themselves, making sure that they feel connected to each other and connected to the work. And we're also training them about how to do the work. So for me, GOTV is more than the traditional methods. It's about empowering our individual volunteers to go out and make an impact.
So we use a strategy around relational organizing. And basically that is friend-to-friend organizing. We train our women how to reach the women and the people in their network through reaching their friends, their coworkers, their family members, everybody that they know. What we have found is that people are more responsive to the people that they know.
Yeah, the call to action for those that are showing up to the polls in November is to take a friend along with you. There's probably someone in your life who may not go out and vote. Make a phone call before you go and remind somebody in your life that it is election day and to get out there and cast their ballot, and to remind people, especially those in historically disenfranchised communities, that as long as you are in line by 8 p.m. on election day, they cannot reject you from voting.
In addition to get out and vote, talk to your family and friends, like I said, all the traditional methods. In addition to that, let's focus on the successes that we're accomplishing as a community. Let's talk about the successes that our government is accomplishing. We often like to talk about the negative. The media often talks about the partisanship and how nothing is getting done, how everyone is arguing. But I often like to concentrate on the people who are the non-voters. And how are we going to get non-voters to participate in this system if they think it's a failed system and they only hear about the negative? So for me, the call to action is to start to highlight and to start off when you're talking to potential voters about what positives are happening in their communities and how it's impacting their lives.
The call to action that I have is for people to go to our website, redwine.blue, and download our rally tool. It's called Rally Your Squad. And start using the tool now and start uploading people that you want to help make sure get to the polls. We call it canvassing from the couch.
I feel passionate about everything. I know. It's like, well, just liberation for everyone. I think voting rights are very important. Education, accessibility, and truth, however ugly it is, just so that we don't repeat history. So I try to spread messages that remind us as a people of our resilience, of our joy, because that's also resistance. So one of my favorite quotes is, "Nobody's free until everybody's free." Just the intersectionality of everything and just how we're tied together. I have Daddy Dressed Me by Michael and Ava Gardner, which is a father and daughter duo, and that encourages kids to find the power and the confidence within themselves, but also that shared confidence that a parent or a caregiver can give. And Daddy and Me Side by Side was written by Pierce Freelon. It's about a father taking his son through a camping adventure and doing all of the things that he used to do with his dad. It encourages kids and boys and men to feel and to be able to express those feelings, and that it's okay to show your feelings. At the moment, I'm working on a book called I Am the Spirit of Justice by Jamar Tisby and Malcolm Newsom. I love that it focuses on the strength that we have as Black people just inside of us to go on and to come together and lift each other up.
welcome to the show, Kat. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read your bio because it is so impressive. All right. Let me tell you guys, this is Kat Calvin. She's the powerhouse behind the national movement of Spread the Vote and Project ID. Through her leadership, over 11,000 people now possess IDs that will help shape their futures. She spearheaded efforts toward an inclusive democracy act and has recently authored American Identity in Crisis. So I've been following your career, believe it or not, probably over 10 years.
Wow.
I mean, mainly because during the Obama era, you were, and now even I'm quite sure, a champion for women and girls. And I had a girl. And so, and then I know that you've been a champion of making sure that we're in the STEM space. And so I know that you're multi-passionate with a lot of causes in your heart. So what is it that has now led you to this particular cause to start this movement with IDs?
Yeah, when I was in law school, I studied the Voting Rights Act and voting in America, but back then we still had a Voting Rights Act. And so it was a lot of like, look at this wonderful thing and how it happened, and then we can all go away. And I went to South Africa and I studied voting there, but everything was really, seemed to be on the surface fine in the States. And so that was when I went into education and working in STEM and sort of some other things. And then Shelby County v. Holder happened in 2013, and very few people were paying attention to what was happening with voter suppression and voter ID laws at that time. And I, in 2015, moved from DC, where I'd been doing a lot of that work, to LA, and I had like burnt down. I'd gotten very sick, and I swore I was never going to run another nonprofit. And then a year later, the 2016 elections happened. And it was our first national election without the full protections of the Voting Rights Act since it had passed. And it was very clear how much the lack of protections to voting impacted the elections, and particularly how much voter ID laws impacted the elections. And so I decided to start an organization to help people get IDs, because there was no national organization specifically helping people get IDs in their hands. So we started that at the end of 2016. It officially launched in mid 2017. But it took us about 5 seconds of going and talking to people about IDs to realize that voting was really the smallest piece of the pie when it came to challenges with ID, and that we actually had this crisis where back then 21 million, now 26 million American adults don't have ID, and without it they can't get jobs, they can't get housing, they can't get access to social services, all of these things. And so we were going to people and saying, hey, do you want this ID to vote? And they were saying, I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight or how to feed my children, I need an ID for that. And so that's when we really fundamentally shifted the mission of the organization from helping people get ID to vote to helping people get IDs to be able to live.
I know that you said that you were inspired, but was there a specific powerful story, or probably many, that you can share with us? Because I really want to get the face of the community and the individuals that you have been encountering during this journey of activism.
Yeah, I opened the book with my first client, Miss Ella, who was this elderly lady living in Georgia. And she had multiple forms of cancer. Didn't have ID, and so she wasn't able to get good healthcare. You can get sort of urgent care, some basic healthcare without ID, but if you really need actual care, or if you need Medicaid or Medi-Cal or whatever you live, you need ID. And so she really needed her ID to be able to help treat her cancer. And we spent months and months and months trying to gather documents, trying to find her birth certificate, getting school records from the 40s and like all these things, trying to be able to get documents to help prove her birth, to prove her residency, all of these things. We couldn't get the documents that she needed to get an ID at the DMV. So then we were trying to get a passport, and we went and turned in this huge stack of documents, which they rejected. And so we had to go back to the drawing board. And during all of this, she kept having all of these medical emergencies. We kept having to reschedule things because she was so ill. And then finally, her sister managed to find her birth certificate. And we were thrilled. And I actually, at that point, was in Virginia, and I went back to Georgia to be able to meet with Miss Ella and the gentleman who was helping her in order to get her ID. And the day we were supposed to meet, he called and said she'd had another medical emergency. She wasn't going to be able to make it. And she actually passed away a few days later. And so she never got her ID. And so for me, that was, as a first client, it was
Right.
as impactful as it could be, because it became very clear almost immediately, oh, this is life or death. And this is not like, I helped me understand why this was so hard for so many people and how important it was. And how much we had to learn to figure out how do we make this a process that is not this challenging, or that at least we can sort of figure out whatever loopholes or whatever we have to to be able to make this easier. But Miss Ella was and continues to be someone I think about constantly.
Right. I remember reading that part and I was like, just the time that it took.
Yep.
Now this platform, Unerased Black Women Speak, it emphasizes the voices and experiences of Black women. Can you provide any insights regarding voter ID issues disproportionately that affect Black women?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, due to centuries of racism and discrimination, when you look at any issue that is a socioeconomic status issue, which the lack of ID is, right? Wealthy people don't have issues getting IDs, right? It's purely a socioeconomic status issue, but that just usually correlates to race in this country, frequently also to gender. And so Black women, although we are 7% of the population, 6%, we tend to be outnumbered when it comes to our representation in any sort of vulnerable category, right? So for us, I think that we can always sort of plug us into whichever category is disadvantaged at a slightly higher percentage because of generations of discrimination. And so, when you look at us in voting, Black women, and we know this because white people really like to say, listen to Black women every October, and then they forget it by mid-November. But we vote very, very high numbers. And that's why you see so many different efforts aimed at stopping voting in ways that Black people and Black women particularly vote. So this is why there are so many states that have banned voting on Sundays, because they want to stop souls to the polls. It's why voter ID laws work, because voter ID is aimed at the 26 million adults who don't have ID. One problem we come across with older Blacks is that back in the day, if you were born in a Jim Crow town, if you were lucky enough to be born in a hospital, you weren't getting a birth certificate. And so we have so many older Black senior citizens who need IDs now, but they never got a birth certificate
in the first place.
So you have to have that to get a passport or an ID. There's always the ability to look at sort of us in a variety of groups and just know, all right, we're going to be a high percentage of this because this is what all of the societal factors for so many generations have led us towards. There are always going to be particular efforts to keep Blacks and Black women from voting in particular ways because we do turn out in such high numbers.
Right. Yeah. And we know that now that we definitely need to get people registered, but it definitely doesn't stop at getting people registered, because getting people to actually get to the polls and vote is the issue. So what are the gaps that you see in between getting someone registered and actually getting them to the polls?
This is so important, and it's a conversation that we need to have, and we're not having enough. If you look at every election, say you're looking at it as a pie chart, right? There will be the section of the pie of people who voted for candidate A, the section of people who voted for candidate B. There will be the section of people who were unregistered and thus didn't vote. And the biggest section of that pie in every election is registered people who didn't vote. Every single time. And that is because of the barriers we put in place that make it impossible to vote. We call them micro barriers. And the fact that if you have one, you probably have several, right? So we can start with ID. There are, in Wisconsin, 225,000 registered voters who do not have the ID they need to vote, right? But there are 26 million American adults, and that's American adults. So the vast majority are eligible voters unless they are returning citizens in states where they haven't had their rights restored, right? But like the vast majority of those are eligible voters. If we know that many people can't vote, and we know that we are constantly trying to register the small percentage of people in this country who are not registered, then we are registering people who do not have the ID they need to vote. Then you have the problem of just getting to the polls, right? Not every state has absentee or mail-in voting. Then don't have a disability and try to expect the little, like, there's always the janky little ADA and acceptable polling station like in the corner where things are broken and it's very
right.
And so there's so many challenges. And then on top of that, there's an educational challenge. It is so hard and so expensive and so complex. And it takes us a very long time of being deeply embedded in our communities. I'm doing a lot of hard work to get folks to the polls because it's really hard.
And this is, you have a national organization, so I would imagine there's a lot of collaboration that has to take place or does take place.
I mean, yeah, we work with partners all over. We work very hard, particularly with partners that serve the same populations we do. So we do a lot of work with homeless shelters and food banks and rehabs and returning citizens organizations and all of these organizations that have daily hands-on interaction with the populations that we are trying to either get IDs for or get to the polls to be able to work with the communities that we are all sort of working in tandem to serve the same population together.
But tell me one more call to action as we start ending the interview.
So definitely you can go to id4id.org. My book American Identity in Crisis is available wherever books are sold. The other thing that I would say is please go to our website, projectid.org. It can give you a lot more information about what this issue is, sort of what we work, how we work. You can certainly donate if you'd like to. You can get in touch if you. We're in 21 states, and we're actually about to next year launch a whole new initiative in which we'll be working in all 50 states. And it's so important. The thing that I'm always trying to do, the thing that the book is trying to do is just get the word out about this issue. There are not a lot of issues that impact 26 million people that no one knows about. And this is one of them. And so just spreading the word, sharing our social media, sharing our website, letting people know, bringing it up is so helpful because we're not going to get this problem solved. We're not going to get the bill passed until everybody knows that this is an issue.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I wish you all the best with all your endeavors. And we're going to be buying your book, going to the website, and exploring how we can be helpful in getting people IDs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you to our phenomenal guests. Thank you to you for tuning in. And remember, democracy isn't just about elections and voting. It's about conversations, participations, getting involved in the community, and all of the daily actions we take to make this world a better place. Democracy is us. We will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.
And before he quit talking, the plantation owner came and said, "Fannie Lou, do you know, did Pap tell you what I said?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, well, I mean that, said if you don't go down and withdraw your registration, you will have to leave. Said then if you go down and withdraw, said you still might have to go because we are not ready for that in Mississippi. And I addressed him and told him, said, I didn't try to register for you. I tried to register for myself.